Hey guys, Professor A here. Just wanted to follow up. Now that we've looked at the last video, which talks a little bit about the process of doing steps 1 and 2 of the minimalist poster, which is what's the theme and creating graphics related to the film, we're going to talk a little bit about how to actually build it in Illustrator and basically relate it back to the film. So there's that part where we have to kind of get everything back to images related to the film. So I have an idea, I have a sketch, it looks like a stick figure, but how does it kind of relate back to the film? And how do I do it in a way that is effective? And what are the ways? So this lesson is going to look at the altering the graphics so it relates back to the film. And we're going to play some footage again. So we're going to use footage from the fall of 2020 to kind of go through that process, and so that we can go through this hyper lesson about converting the file. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a peek, and let's see in this recording how we develop it from a drawing on a paper or a doodle on a paper to a digital Illustrator file format. Let's observe. And pull this up. I'm actually going to steal a couple of slides from my logo project so that you guys are get a little bit of an early feel for the process. So 2 ways to process images. I normally roll this out when we do logos, but this is basically how you can approach this project. Okay, from 2 different points. Number 1, you can draw it out, right? Kind of like what Adriana is doing. You can draw out your concept and scan it, take a picture of it on your phone. Phones are really great, have really great HD qualities these days. And you can redraw with your pen tool. You already know how to draw with the pen tool. So you're basically taking your drawing, if you feel super confident with it, and you're just bringing it into your program, emailing it to yourself, downloading it to your laptop, and using that pen tool and drawing it using that Mickey approach, right? The way you drew Mickey, you're going to draw that same graphic, right? Closed vector objects and the whole works. Everything's a closed vector object, okay? So that's one approach. The second approach is kind of like a reverse engineering. This is where I'm going to kind of talk to you a little bit about the live trace. But here's option 1, okay? Adriana's is a little bit more for you. So you're scanning it, you took a photo, you emailed it to yourself, you're redrawing it, and you're making small changes. I forgot to mention that too. So your small changes are going to be a lot of like, how do I take away? How do I take away? How do I take away? And get to minimal. And that's going to be a challenge, but you'll get there, and we'll find a nice balance eventually. So that's going to be you and maybe a couple of us here that feel comfortable with the drawing ability. Okay. The other way is using a live trace tool, okay? And this one is always a favorite, but it does have a couple of caveats. So how does that work? First thing is that I always like to look for the image, and I always like to add 2 key terms. One is either adding the word icon or illustration to it, but more so icon, because icons, as you can see here, are very easy, simple, minimalist graphics. Those are typically what you get when you type in icon to anything. So if you're doing like Chicano, for example, and you're doing a car and it's going to look simple, then I would actually do a search for like a lowrider illustration in Google or lowrider icon, just to kind of break it up and make it look a little simple, okay? When we find the image, we're going to bring it in, bring it into Illustrator, and we're going to activate a tool called the Live Trace tool, okay? And I'm going to demo that for you right now. And you're gonna hate me for it, because you're gonna be like, why didn't you show this in the beginning? And I'm like, there's a reason for that, okay? So I'm gonna use DJs as an example, just because it's gonna work to a little bit to his advantage, okay? So let me switch over really quick. So, and I'm gonna go to my Google Chrome. and kind of pull it up. Okay, so DJ, you said you want to use a lowrider, right? And let me go ahead and enter a new tab here. So if I went back to the Chicano film, it's obviously it's live, it's a documentary, it's live shot, right? So to take a photo from that and redraw it would take a minute. It's not impossible, but it would take a while for it to get redrawn. The other thing you can do is that you can come in and you can type in under your search key lowrider icon. And under images, I can start looking for images of lowriders that are various range of simplification, if that makes sense. So, you know, I don't know specifically which one you're going with. I'm just going to go based off my own instinct here. But I do want something that kind of has a bit of a minimalist, simplified look, but it's not too detailed. So anything that's a photo, knock it off the list. That is not going to work for you because photos do not translate well generally. And let's see, I will try this image here just to kind of play with it. So this image looks kind of interesting. Google thankfully kind of has a little object there. Kind of thinking back to your sketch, it looks like you were trying to do something that was a bit of a side profile. So maybe, you know, maybe something like that might actually work a little better. That's a little bit more of a side profile in the graphic. So let's see if this works. Okay, I'm gonna click onto that graphic, see if I can find something. Can you find it in Pinterest and other sites? Yeah, you can. Can you find it and do a search on Vecteezy? Yeah, you could totally do that there. Totally okay to go those routes. Don't see it here. I think it's this one here. And I'm just gonna kind of like just either copy and paste or take a screenshot of that. I'll just screenshot that for the time being and add that into my system. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to launch my Adobe Illustrator program. And good thing it is already open. So I'm going to open up my Illustrator program. And for this one, I'm going to bring it into the file. So Adobe Illustrator. Okay. I'm going to create a new poster. Okay, you can use the template I gave you, or you can enter a new poster. So let's go ahead and just go 24 by 36. Okay, that's great. If you found a simple example there, DJ, that's awesome. I'm just going to walk you through that process. Okay, here's my poster. I'm going to go to the file menu. I know it doesn't quite show it, but I'm going to go to File. I'm going to import it, or I can click and drag onto the image from my desktop and drag it into the program. So I'm going to go ahead and take a moment to do that. Hopefully it'll show here. I'm going to drag it in. So here we go. And there's the image there. A little low resolution, so I'm going to try to zoom in. Okay. So my image is here, and I'm going to use my selection tool, the black arrow, to click onto it. When I click onto it, okay, notice when I click onto it, there's going to be a series of tools that appear right above. So if I go to my annotation tool, they only appear when I click onto it. So if I take a moment to kind of click away on the annotation, come back to annotation, click away here for a second. Notice how when I click the image, it shows up. When I don't, it goes away. So this only will show when you click onto the image, okay? The X over the graphic represents that it's a temporarily placed image from your desktop. And normally what I like to do is I like to permanently embed them into my document so that if it closes or if I delete an image or screenshot by mistake, it's permanent. So just kind of remember on the back of your mind that anytime an image is dragged in and it's not embedded, it's always going to try to tag it or look for the file on your desktop or wherever it's loaded from. And if you ever delete something, or let's say you throw it in the trash, it's going to say, I can't find the image. I can't find the image. So if I were to do that right now and throw it away, then eventually I would get like an alert saying, can't see it, or the embed feature would not be clickable. So I want to make sure that I always have my, my file available to me so I can embed. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click the image with the selection tool, black arrow tool on the upper left of my toolbar. And I'm going to hit this button, which is embed. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. When I hit embed, the X in the photo will disappear. So basically it's going to go away. So this little X that's over the image in blue, right? It's going to go away. So let's see what happens when I hit embed. Okay. Okay. Image is embedded. That blue X is there. The gray one is there because that's the screenshot. Okay. So that's the first thing. The second thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to hit this button here, which is the image trace button. Now the image trace button has a little down arrow key here on the right. And I'm going to click onto that because those are my features. So this button I'm going to click on. When I click onto that button, okay, it's going to give me some features. Do I want it to trace as a high fidelity photo, low fidelity, 3 colors, 6 colors, 16 colors, shades of gray, black and white, sketch art, silhouette, line art, or technical art? If I just click on one of these, let's say like black and white logo, the computer will try to find the greatest contrast between the images and it will do like a trace for me. And it doesn't look all that great. So I'm going to come back to my presetting on the upper left here. And I'm going to modify it. I'm going to try sketch art. A little bit better. Silhouette. I see everything, but it's really dark. Line art. It's taking a moment to process. No, not so much. Technical drawing. Not so much. So the one that seems to work for me a little bit could be silhouette. But I'm not a big fan of the silhouette in this level of tracing. The computer doesn't know what's appropriate or not. So I'm going to click on to tracing result. And under tracing results, I'm going to see if it can actually trace under outlines with the source image so I can see it as a reference or source image itself. You don't have to, but for me, I kind of like to trace it with the source image overlaying it so I can kind of see it as a feature. Then next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to modify some of the settings. That's where this menu comes in. And that menu is my options menu here. Click onto that. And it's going to give me the image trace panel. And the image trace panel is here to control the level of trace happening in the graphic. So the first thing I want to make sure is that the preview is activated, of course, making sure that it's visible so I can see it. And then I can control how much of a threshold I can get in my image. So let's go back to the tracing result just to make it a little bit more clear. And as I slide my slider to the left, the program is kind of dictating how much I see of a graphic versus not. So maybe I want to go a little bit less. Maybe I want to see a little bit more of the door. Maybe I want to see more of the outline. But it allows me to kind of control just how much of a threshold, just how much of a detail the graphic traces. And I can even zoom in and kind of get a little bit more of a graphic detail there. Obviously, the greater the image, the clearer the source image, the better it's going to be, right? So the greater the detail, the greater the source, the higher the resolution, the better off it can be, okay? So to me, you know, this is relatively okay. I don't mind that. I can even click onto my advanced settings, and I can even go a little bit further, and I can say, you know what, let's make the corners a little bit more visible. Let's bring down the noise. You know, let's reduce some of that noise happening in between some of the form. Maybe we want to see a little bit more of the detailing there. You know, maybe we want to have some overlapping shapes happening, which is super subtle. Maybe we want to see some strokes happening in the graphic instead of some fills. So how much this program draws is completely up to you. And that's great. That's nice to have that level of control in order to get where we want to go. When I see something that looks somewhat interesting and we're really happy with the results and we're not going back to modify, then I'm going to hit expand. And that is right up here, which is this button. And when I click on to expand, then you'll notice instantly these blue outlines, and my program has now, and if you see it in outline mode, has now traced the image for me. Okay, and that's pretty powerful. The fact that it was able to do that within, like, you know, what, 5 minutes, if you really had a couple of seconds there. The downside is that there is a level of cleanup required in order for this to work, because, you know, maybe the image is not as detailed as we saw. So you may need to go back in and clean it up, right? And just so you know, when it traces, okay, it traces everything, including the background. So if you want to do a red poster and you want the card to be black and white, but that box is killing you, you will have to come in with your direct selection tool, which is that white arrow on the toolbar, and literally click outside the artboard, click inside the background, and delete it manually. To which then, of course, you have to come back with your pen tool and fill in some of those missing gaps in white. Okay, so now you see why, like, I don't do the pen tool right away, or excuse me, I don't show you tracing right away, because it takes more work to clean it up than it does to actually use the tool. Does that make sense? So if I started here, you would need to know the pen tool anyway in order for this to be successful. So we had to go to the pen tool regardless. I just took it upon myself to show you how to trace anything with the pen tool. And now that you know how to trace anything with the pen tool, you can now clean and edit anything with the pen tool. Does that make sense? So that's part of the process. So it's by design that I set it up that way. Okay. Now that we have that, I have a very, you know, compelling graphic, right? Obviously I have to group things. So I have to make sure that I select the image and I right click, group it, or go to object menu and group it, or Command G. But now this is an editable image that I can scale up, scale down, and modify. And it saved me a significant amount of time to kind of create it. Is it clear? No. Is it perfect? No. But you can always go back and clean your graphic up. So just by doing that, that will save you a lot of time. And that's really the secret to this project, is to find the balance between tracing, editing, versus drawing or drawing the actual artwork from scratch. So if you're doing SOAR, highly recommend you guys go back to that movie and pause certain scenes, expand that screen, put it on HD mode, take a screenshot, and run it through some filters, right? Run it through an image trace. If it doesn't work, some of you might have to trace it from scratch, like you did the Mickey t-shirt. Took a photo and you drew it from scratch, creating closed vector objects. I'm just giving you some strategies for tonight, okay? So those are ultimately the approaches, okay? So questions, comments. Okay, so I hope that video helps because that's going to be really, really
Was this
key.
helpful?
Let me go ahead and pause that. And I think that's going to help us overall in that process. So those two steps are going to be helpful. And again, we're going to come back to this slide, which basically says 2 ways to process the image. We either take your drawing, scan it, or use your mobile phone to take a picture of it and email it to yourself and bring it into the Illustrator program and redraw with the pen tool. Or we can Google search, find the icon, and let Illustrator trace it so that we can put it into the program with some tools, modifications using our pen tool. Okay, so that's ultimately where we're going to go. I totally hope that this was helpful for these steps. And let's go ahead and move forward with developing your graphics. So again, these are hyper lessons. And so we want to make sure that as soon as we do one set of images for that hour 1, that for hour 2, we're going to move into developing your graphic so that hopefully for hour 3, we can review, make modifications, and tune up the graphic like we did for the Mickey shirt. Okay. All right, guys. Hopefully that was helpful. We will see you on review of digital illustrations. Okay. See you then. Bye-bye.